Welcome back to Footy Classified. Everyone in football is getting a haircut, including the CEO of GWS, Dave Matthews, who joins us tonight. He's had the number one cut there. Dave, good on you, mate. Welcome to Footy Classified tonight.
Thanks, Ed.
Hey, first up, story today in the Daily Telegraph in Sydney. The first move for your club to try and get some people back to the games. Giant bid for fans return. GWS is hopeful provisions can be made for up to 350 corporate guests to be let into the Giant Stadium as early as the first game back against North Melbourne on June 14. Great stuff. What are you doing? How's it happening?
Well, the New South Wales government, Eddie, has actually relaxed a lot of the restrictions in relation to function centres and restaurants and bars, and the Giant Stadium facilities basically fall under that opportunity. So at the moment we're working to see what we can get done in terms of getting some people in, and certainly that first game against the Kangaroos we're aiming for, but we're happy to work through it and get the right approvals from the authorities.
Without being negative, Dave, shouldn't you be making some of that number made up of club members and the general public who would just love to come and see the Giants and not just corporates?
Yeah, it possibly will be, Caro. That's actually part of the aim. It depends on the restrictions and what we're able to do. I mean, obviously, every club is aiming to get back to normality as soon as we can and get crowds in. That's the main aim. And, spectators, members, obviously try to fill Giant Stadium. But in the first instance, what opportunity might be available is the corporate suites that are obviously owned as entitlements by a lot of our sponsors, and then function rooms. And we'd certainly look to make some of them available and maybe do some promotions with members as well. So we're just working through all that at the moment.
Dave, a number of club presidents have spoken to Gillon McLachlan and the Commission, I'm told, as a result of the Peter Gordon interview that ran an article by Mick Warner in the Herald Sun last week, where he spoke about the fact that 18 clubs might not survive. He also said that vulnerable clubs had to be more accountable. There were quite a few comments that upset a lot of people in the AFL. Did your president, or have you addressed those comments? Were you disappointed by them?
Oh, not necessarily. I mean, we noticed them, but I think the level of accountability in the AFL, whether it be you're working at the Giants or whether you're working at Richmond or whether you're working at any club, I mean, the level of transparency and accountability is enormous. So, I know over the 9-year history of the Giants, we couldn't have been more accountable. I mean, every dollar's scrutinised. And, the main thing for us is really the views of Richard Goyder and the Commission and Gillon McLachlan in saying that there's 18 clubs going in, there's 18 coming out. I think, broadly the AFL has done a great job, and obviously the Cabinet has served the purpose for sure. And, some of those comments aren't helpful to the anxiety of employees and coaches across the competition. But, we feel really confident in the future of the Giants. There's no doubt about that.
Dave, can I ask you, the part of the issue that I think Peter Gordon was touching on there was how much money there is in the game and where do you look at different things. One of the things that you've been looking at, have been quoted on, is potentially, and it's a big capital P on potential, private ownership. And you've had a couple of very strong supporters from the United States who have been around. You've worked it pretty hard. You've been looking at maybe playing even games over on the west coast of America. Is that something that you would now seriously contemplate? Because, AFL football's starting to get a little bit of a toehold in America. When I say a little bit, there's going to get more opportunities in the next couple of weeks, I understand. Is this something you'd look at that would then take that issue, if you like, off the table if GWS was privately owned?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things there, Eddie. One of them is that as a young club, our ticketing revenue and our consumer revenue obviously has a long way to go to get to the levels that other clubs enjoy. So, we've over time tried to work out how do we make up that sort of revenue gap. We're very fortunate to have, enormous support from coterie groups, and it's a captain's club in Sydney, it's a Territorians in Canberra, and we have a group called the M7. As you say, there's some interest from the US in that group at the moment. That's probably amongst 25 individuals. It's probably a couple of $1 million a year. They have backgrounds in US sport where there is private ownership models, and it just leads you to think, is there a possibility of participation or equity at some point? We are, as you said a moment ago, we're in unforeseen circumstances, and if there's opportunities to bring third-party money into the game, I think they have to be considered. But that's not to say it's a it's a topic that we're dwelling on every day or that there's any proposals being exchanged. It's just a discussion point, I think.
Certainly worth having a look at. I was approached in the last 10 days by a major American sports franchise asking whether or not they could buy into Collingwood. And the answer was no, because we're a members club. But they don't understand the members club over there, do they, Dave? They go, what do you mean? You're not owned by somebody? How does this work? So for an American to come in and look at GWS would make perfect sense if you're going to get involved in AFL football.
Well, I think the expansion seeds are a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
As you said, the discretionary spend has tightened up. So that $25 million a year going to each club, come back into the traditional clubs. But if you get that big private ownership money, and Dave, just while you're there, you spoke about third parties and coming in and the support they can give the clubs. There's constant speculation about your star players leaving. So the job you've done to sign Green on a long-term contract and then Cornelia, how important have those third-party arrangements been with those players to get that done? Or does it not come into play?
It comes into play in terms of giving them confidence in the direction of the club, Ross. I mean, it's not something that lines the players' pockets, but what it does do is give the club the financial capacity to pay up to the limits of the soft cap and the salary cap. And then I also think it just gives the staff and the players generally confidence that we're on the right path. I think we're 6th or 7th in the competition for commercial revenue, and we're only 9 years old. So it's important as you're trying to re-sign players that they see a future vision and they see stability at the club, and that's what we've been able to provide.
Yes, I misread it. So there's no direct benefit. It's just into the club coffers more and gives them confidence.
That's right.
Dave, I'm fascinated by what happens to our second-tier competitions. Where will the Giants seconds play from 2021?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good question, Matthew, and there's a lot of decisions that need to get made before we know for sure. But I think obviously the NEFL's played an important role since the Giants and the Suns came into the competition. Its future would really be dependent on, firstly, how the clubs in that competition from a community point of view are going from a viability point of view. And then you look at list sizes and other things. I mean, we're open to all sorts of solutions. The most important thing for us would be that we need to, I think, put in a standalone team. I think all 4 clubs north of the Murray are committed to that. And if that's in the NEFL or an expanded VFL Eastern Seaboard style competition, I just think what's important from an equalisation point of view is it doesn't matter where you get drafted, it needs to be an equal opportunity to develop. So that's the most important consideration in the second.
Thanks very much for joining us. There's plenty to get through. The main thing, though, Lordy, to your question, is that the AFL is saying, let's get next week done, get going, and then we'll get into the secondary competition. I think there's going to be some big news in all of that area, and Dave might have given us a bit of a head start on that Eastern Seaboard type of second-tier competition. Good on you, Dave. Good luck for the game next week as well, and we hope you get some people in for the Kangaroos match.
Thanks very much.
Good on you, Dave Matthews, the CEO of GWS.